The Trump administration plans on changing the focus of the Countering Violent Extremism program to solely address radical Islamic terrorism, considering that right-wing extremists, whom are primarily composed of white supremacists and white nationalists, are responsible for more killings of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil on average annually. Do you believe that focusing solely on jihadist extremism is a proper policy?
It's it's extremely wrong-headed and destructive, and it essentially confirms the worst accusations that are out there, not only in the Middle East, but here in the United States as well, that the U.S. is anti-Muslim and that we are discriminating and oppressing Muslim people in this country and around the world. So it's extremely counterproductive. It validates the feelings of those people who are, the next in line to be recruited to terrorist enterprises. And the numbers you gave, are absolutely right. The odds of being killed by a so-called Islamic terrorist, which is really a distortion of Islam, but the odds of being killed by such a person are like 1/5.
It's 0.00003%,
which is 1/5 the odds of being struck by lightning.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are 500,000 people who die every year from the consequences of poverty and poor education, which also, leads to poverty and homelessness and ill health and all that. So to make America secure, how about we start talking about 500,000 people who die needlessly every year from essentially economic oppression and lack of education? That would be how we truly improve American security. Then it's on average, it's one person a year on U.S. soil who would be killed by a so-called terrorist. So let's put our money where it ought to go, not where it's going currently, which is essentially to drive fear into the hearts of Americans in order to set people against each other, in order to demonize immigrants and Muslims, to create xenophobia, and to essentially shore up support for an authoritarian militaristic government. These are the tools of demagogues. These are the tools of right-wing extremism that we must resist.
Absolutely. And what I'm more so concerned with, considering that I am a person of color, is constantly in the media, we see individuals like Dylan Roof, for example, who are responsible for quite literally terrorist acts. And they're treated in the media as being misunderstood college students, for example, or lone wolf. How is it that we have, this government and a media that refuses to, consider white terrorists terrorists? They aren't extremists. We should be, calling them for what their actions, deem it. So it should be a shift, at least, to where people feel comfortable, considering that just because you're white doesn't mean that, you don't mean people, goodwill or what have you. So what I'm more so concerned with is this idea that in order to be a terrorist, you have to be, brown-skinned.
Exactly. Right. I mean, look at Timothy McVeigh, who blew up a government building with kids in daycare in it. I mean, and he was a right-wing Christian-inspired, and again, with a terrible misinterpretation that does a terrible injustice to Christianity in the same way that to associate extremists with Islam is an injustice to Islam. It is just a symptom of the inherent existing racism. And again, the intention to divide and conquer and create a society based on fear. And I think we stand up to that by refusing to give in to fear, refusing to give in to hate, and to just continuing to build a sense of community, to address racism at its core. We should be having a community conversation on race, which we badly need at the local and community as well as at the national level, and we need to throw the bums out, who are disgracing our elected offices through their racist rhetoric and the likes of bringing absolute, unabashed racists like Stephen Bannon into the highest halls of power. This is just an incredible national scandal.
Absolutely.